Fuel is a major factor among many others influencing transport cost and transport rates in Nigeria. It is an inelastic product both at demand and supply sides, which means that it is very difficult for consumers to find alternatives to the use of it in their daily lives. Now, for a developing country like Nigeria, fuel subsidy is considered as a major tool to enhance citizens' welfare, most especially the middle and low-income earners. However, the subsidization of fuel in Nigeria has not yielded the desired result, hence made the federal government recently remove the subsidy in the commodity. Now, we'll be talking about this, and we have in the studio Chukwuma Chinye Jr., a researcher at the Center for Democracy and Development, and also the acting General Secretary of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, Comrade Anthony Asogwa. He will be also giving his perspectives to this subject. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So let me start with you, Comrade Anthony. We have seen the decision taken by the federal government, the TUC, and the NLC arising from their meeting yesterday. What do you make of all that has happened? Is the NURTW in sync? I know that it's an affiliate of the NLC, but then talk to us about how the NURTW also align with the decisions that have been taken so far.
Thank you. The truth remains that NITW, like you rightly pointed out, is an affiliate of the NLC. And whatever decision the NLC with TUC arrives with the federal government, surely we are in support of it. And to expatiate, NITW, we know transportation plays a key role in every economy. And anything that affects transport virtually will affect every other sectors of the economy. And this recent increase, or would I say removal of the subsidy, which jacked up the price or pump price of PMS, surely it will affect the entire structure of the economy. But the fact remains that we believe is the best decision. We totally support the removal of the subsidy. But our problem, or what we are crying for, is that government should have put a measure in place in terms of palliatives that will cushion the effect of the removal.
Comrade, if I can just chime in, can you give us a snapshot of what the impact has been since the removal of subsidy on the operations of your members, for instance, and how that has either disrupted or generally what the impact has been so far?
Well, we all know it has been terrible, so to say. Yes. People have been subjected to suffering. But I know and I believe that is a temporary something. Because since the hike in the prices of PMS, let me use myself as an example. Before now, I use about 12,000 naira or thereabout to fill my tank. But now it's about 32,000 to 34,000 naira. You can see the difference. Yes, so people have been subjected to suffering. But nevertheless, anytime you remove subsidy in anything at all, it must have effect on the people.
Yeah. For some people, they always say that when it happens, unions like yours adjust, you increase the transportation fares, and you pass along that burden, that economic burden, on your passengers. So give us an idea as to what sort of engagement has happened between the NURTW and Nigerians who are traveling from point A to point B across the country, because I know they will be, naturally dissatisfied with the change in the status quo.
Well, the issue of increment in prices of transportation in a situation where the prices of fuel is increased, it's not peculiar with the NRTW. I'll give you an example. As we are speaking, the prices of dollar is about 700 naira to the, or more than 700 to the dollar. They sell as they bought. So you don't expect a driver who used 10,000 naira or thereabout to fill his tank, and now he's using about 17,000 naira to charge the same thing.
I suppose the question in there is, are you regulating the prices, or are your drivers free to charge whatever they want to charge?
No. We have our team of enforcement team, and we have not even announced officially any
price adjustment.
Yes, because we are waiting for the outcome of discussions between the federal government and the labor.
So does that mean that the prices are still the same?
Well.
Because you said officially you have not made any changes.
Officially we have made any changes. But definitely, maybe we'll meet at our National Executive Council level and take a decision.
All right. Well, let's go to Chukwuma. What's your reaction to the changes that we've seen in the past few days and the approach, really? That's one thing that a lot of people keep talking about. They say that we are probably putting the horse before the cat, or is it the cat before the horse, you know, in this instance, because all the negotiations and the conversation that we are now seeing between the federal government, the TUC and the LC are things that should have happened before this decision was taken.
I think, thank you very much for having me once again. I think where we should start is this issue wasn't created yesterday. We've had issues regarding the servicing of our budget with regards to the fuel subsidy. As you know, under the previous administration, between January and July, I think it was 3-point-something trillion naira that was allocated for our fuel subsidy, but the money apparently is not there. There's not enough money to provide for that, and as I think Mele Kyari was saying, the federal government is owing the NNPC quite a lot of money as it is already. So I think this decision, as with a lot of things that happen in this country, unfortunately, yes, it was rushed, but I think was also born of some sort of necessity. If the well is dry, you can't, no matter how you try, you cannot draw any water out of it. So I think that is where it is. As much as these conversations should have happened before, they should have happened last year, maybe even the year before. It's not something that, at the end of transitioning towards a new administration. And that points to another thing as well. I am fairly critical of the decision. As much as I support the rationale behind the removal of fuel subsidy, it's something that is done in a transitional state. Currently in Nigeria, we're just going from one administration to another, and something that is so, it's a big step. It's going to have a lot of effect. It's already having a lot of effect on the ordinary man or Nigerian. So I think what I would say, though, is better late than never. Whilst it is a big problem now that we're hearing that although the strike has been suspended, I think what should happen is all parties should go on the table, and hopefully this can be a catalyst for better social welfare regarding other parts of our society as well.
Have you seen anything that suggests that there could be some sort of design, either by policy or by program from the administration, to ensure a smooth transition from this subsidy regime to a state where we don't have to subsidize PMS anymore, and then we can live with the consequences of this removal?
Well, as has been said, what is trying to be done is allowing market forces to sort of guide the price of PMS currently, and
explain that to average Nigerians, and not in the economist way, but when we say market forces, what are we talking about here? Because we still have the NNPCL as a significant player in the industry, right? You have your likes of Dangote refinery, which has not produced anything significant yet.
Yes,
and Mele Kyari said we're well away from the first batch of productions that the refinery will produce, and we still have moribund refineries that are still government owned. So when we say market forces, aren't we still talking about the same people that have controlled the industry?
Well, as at today, probably yes, but I think the goal is, for a stipulation that NNPC, for instance, can only produce or import 30% of our PMS, and the rest is left to open competition. So what that creates is, there's incentives for, better both on the downstream and upstream sectors of production. When things like that happen, the price tends to go down. So looking away from the pure economics of it, what I think there's a double benefit for both the federal government. The rationale is, okay, we remove the subsidy and hopefully we can use this money and divert it towards, to better causes. As to how that might play out in practice, I am not sure.
All right, comrade, one of the biggest fear of many Nigerians is the impact that this subsidy removal will have on the cost of food in the market. We already have a food inflation that is over 22%. And now we are talking about, cost of transport, hiking. Yes, some have said, well, majorly the vehicles that we use to transport food around the country do not use petrol per se, they use diesel. And so the increase or the removal of the subsidy may not have an impact on the cost of food. Is that really possible, and how feasible is that?
I think it is correct because we use trucks to transport food items, and trucks use diesel. And the subsidy on diesel have been removed long ago. So it has been selling for as much as...
So there's no reason for food prices to go up?
Yes.
Going back?
Except the traders on their own will capitalize on this and start increasing, because most of the food items are transported by trucks. And there's no increase in diesel. This time it's only PMS. So I think there won't be any need for a price increase in the food items. That's my.
There's one other area in which people are saying perhaps if government have looked that way, it would at least help the issue of transportation for commuters, for majority of Nigerians, which is that maybe the government should make some kind of arrangement for public mass transits and the rest, like we've seen in the past. It doesn't look like that kind of arrangement is on the table right now.
Well, the point is that in most cases, government is not a good businessman, so to say. Most of the time when they bring out these mass transit buses being managed by a civil servant, they don't know how to manage transport. Okay, take for instance the buses that were procured during the administration of Jonathan. Most of them are now parked somewhere. They are no longer functional. So what we are, on our own, what we are asking government, what we are pleading with government, get us buses at interest-free loans to the union. It is our business. We know how to manage transport, rather than giving it to government officials to manage, because the interest there will be so much.
And how will that trickle down to affect the lives of Nigerians?
Of course it will, because when we have more than enough buses, it will surely reduce the prices of
transportation costs.
But then you'll be buying your PMS at the
same price. So somebody is losing money. The question is who is going to lose that money? Because if the government buys the buses, that's coming off taxpayers' money, and then you get to buy the product at the same price. So we're not breaking even here.
No, I said the PMS price will not remain the same. If government is able to do what we have suggested earlier on, one, fix the refineries. If we are refining our products here, there won't be any need for subsidy in the first place.
Well, we're definitely a long way from that.
Of course, that is a long time, but it won't take long that much We already have the refineries just to fix them.
No, but the point is
Again,
that it has been
listen.
argued that even if we produce, even if we refine
Yes.
the product locally here,
Yeah.
the difference may not be really that much.
The demand
Going by
is
the
higher than what we can
international-
produce.
yes, going by the international pricing and the rest of
Again,
them.
we suggested to government CNG.
All right.
If they're able to put in place this CNG, because it's not only eco-friendly, but it's also cheaper.
All right.
That would drastically reduce. Already, Innocent is producing vehicles fitted with CNG. And far back as 2021, thereabout, Labour and government agreed on this. There are companies that are ready to invest on that.
Okay.
So, and also, even we have local refineries in the Niger Delta. Instead of government pursuing them, why not give them licenses?
I mean, the past administration has done something about the modular refineries and trying to scale some of their production. But I think at the end of the day, these are still, just drops in the ocean. But Mr. Chukwuma, if I can circle back to you and get the conversation going about the $800 million World Bank loan. They're supposed to target Nigerians, poor Nigerians, as a result of the removal of subsidy. I mean, the Buhari administration started having that conversation in the twilight weeks of the administration coming to an end. Now the organized labor is having the same conversation with the Tinubu administration. What do you recommend as far as approach and design for this social interventions? Because we've seen several of them in the past that have failed to actually get the job done, to reach the poorest of the poor and to actually have the desired result or outcome. So what do you think we should do this time around as far as palliative goes?
I think the first where we need to start this conversation is to recognize that poverty in Nigeria is multidimensional. It's poverty intersects at different aspects of people's lives. You have people who are women who can buy sanitary products. You have people who can't, who earn less than the minimum wage. You have parents who can't send their children to schools. So if you have a multidimensional problem, the solutions have to be multidimensional. It has to go just across. We saw the palliatives that were given out during COVID-19, right. And I was actually, as part of my organization, was part of a project that went to Kano State, went to Lagos, to see how those palliatives, whether they were effective, and they were unequivocally very, very ineffective in providing any sort of relief during the COVID period. So in terms of structure and recommendations, where we have to start from is, increasing the disposable income, spending power of Nigerians, and the easiest way to do that is to raise the minimum wage. That's the starting point for me. You have to raise the minimum wage by a factor of more than maybe 100%, because 30,000 naira when you're selling PMS at 537 in Abuja doesn't even take into consideration that in other parts of the country, people are not earning that 30,000 naira, and in the northwest, northeast, it's as high as almost 600 per litre. So that for me has to be the starting point, to raise the minimum wage for workers.
Okay, so fair enough. Based on the agreement that was had yesterday, that there's going to be a committee, joint committee of the federal government, TUC, and Labour to actually look at the review proposal for this minimum wage. Now, this is one of the items that have been agreed. Let me just quickly run down some of the things that have been agreed. The federal government is also, alongside TUC and NLC, going to review the World Bank finance cash transfer scheme to now include workers at the lower level so that they can be part of it. So it's not just the social register of the federal government, but also workers who are at the lower level will be added to that $800 million cash palliative. There's also the plan to revive the CNG conversion program, like you have mentioned as well, comrade. The labor centers and the federal government are to review issues hindering effective delivery in the education sector. Also talks about fixing of the refinery. There's going to be a committee to look at framework for the completion of the rehabilitation of the nation's refineries, and also the look into maintenance of roads and expansion of rail networks. And all demands submitted by the TUC will be considered. One of the demands by the TUC is the proposal of 200,000 naira as minimum wage, you know, in the country. So when you look at some of these things, they are more of issues of a long time. They are more of like you continue to have this conversation, because even the government and the union said they're going to continue, you know, conversations. But in the interim, Nigerians are already buying this product at 537, some 550, and the rest of them. What short-term arrangements can we make while these conversations are going on? To you, comrade.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the fact remains that, honestly, in the interim, the best the government can do, I honestly, because even if you suggest giving the poor, or would I say the poor of the poor, 5,000, where would it go?
One of the initial requests that we've heard by the TUC is that the government should reverse the pump price to the initial price while these conversations are ongoing, you know, before, you know, implementing it finally when the conversations are done.
I think if the government adheres to that, it is a good measure. Because before all these other things, which are long-time projects coming to, if you leave it at this this price it is now, because it's not even the same across the country. There are races we buy 540, 600, and the rest. So the suffering will be too much, actually.
Right. Comrade, is there something from your experience that tells you that, you know, there is very little reason to be optimistic? Because I can feel the skepticism you have about, you know, what the negotiation is going to look like.
No, I believe the government, I believe they are sincere. I believe they are sincere. The president, we know, is a man who can always deliver.
And is there something from the Lagos experience? Because I hear a lot of people say, for instance, Lagos State government has, you know, kept its influence in the transportation industry in Lagos for years now. And some would even, you know, go as far back as 1999 when Tinubu came in as governor. To date, they still spend heavily on transportation. Do you think there's a chance that he could replicate that Lagos formula nationwide, especially at this time where transportation is at the center of some of the conversations we're having today?
Yes, like I said, the president is somebody who we know has always delivered, and there's nothing impossible. He can do it, he can replicate it nationwide, or particularly in the major cities of the country, like Abuja, Port Harcourt. Already, Lagos is already done. So another big cities, I think that would go a long way, because the major problem is in the major cities where civil servants are mostly resident.
Okay. Chukuma, do you think that the NLC, the TUC, is in a position to make a fair, to get a fair deal, to have a negotiation really? Because yesterday we had this court order stopping NLC from proceeding with the strike action that they had initially planned to embark on. And we also hear statements from the Inspector General of Police saying things like, any attempt to embark on an industrial action is a threat to peace and security, and they will not sit and allow, you know, the unions disrupt the stability in the country and the rest of them. Do you think that the NLC is well positioned to actually negotiate?
When you say well positioned, what are you referring to?
Do they have enough leverage, for instance? Because the strike action usually is the leverage that organized labor has.
I do not think they do, unfortunately. We have seen repeatedly, I think a good example is, you know, the strikes at the national universities recently, and how deadlocked and jammed that particular negotiation process was. I think currently the only leverage they have really is the fact that I think all of Nigeria is sort of behind them. There's not one of their demands that a normal Nigerian would see and say is unreasonable. But however, as we have seen, it's going to be very difficult if you have the judicial process which is capable of nullifying this. And I think what the government is capable of doing is, illegitimizing any strikes that occur. And once that illegitimization process happens, it then becomes, you're not following due process. We've already said we're going to negotiate. We said we're going to listen to all your, consider all your demands. So why are you still going on strike? So I think if what the NLC and TUC can do is basically dance to the tune of the government, really. If they say, we're going to take 21 days, whatever long to do this, consider this process, that is what they have to do. Any truncation of that, then I feel legitimizes, as you said, the IGP has already said, any strike and so on and so forth is a threat to national security.
Okay, but Chukuma, okay.
The NLC has the leverage, the capacity.
But the one toolbox that the NLC or the organized labor has always used somewhat effectively has always been strikes. And if the court stops you from going to strike, what else can the NLC do at this point?
Well, honestly, strike is a legitimate tool.
Right. The courts are also...
Yes. The court, if the court stops it, the NLC can appeal against that.
Right. So it still goes back to the same thing. You only have one tool in your toolbox, and that's strike action.
In other countries,
of course, you see, there could be a strike. When I'm in my home, will you come and arrest me?
Right.
If everybody sits at home, because the situation.
Yes, but recently we had a court judgment, because we're still talking about how government use courts these days. The ASU strike, for instance, there was a court judgment justifying government's decision of no work, no pay, for the lecturers, university lecturers and the likes. So when you see such things happening, where does that leave unionism and the potency of the unions to actually make demands, of government?
You see, this is not the first time. In fact, during the military era, the military tried to muzzle the labor unions. It did not succeed.
A lot of people would argue, comrade, that was a different labor movement.
Exactly.
The current labor movement has the same...
You believe so?
I do.
Okay. Of course, you are part of the setup. But Chukuma, if we can talk about, away from the economics of the conversation, all right, if we can talk about the politics of it. The administration is barely 10 days now, I believe. So some people believe that this is the honeymoon phase, where Nigerians are supposed to be sweet to the administration, and the administration is also trying to be sweet to Nigerians. Do you believe that for political reasons, the Tinubu administration has to find a way to appease Nigerians so that it does not start this new journey on a very wrong footing?
Definitely. We, I'm sure, still fresh in memory how divided the actual elections were itself. How close run of an affair it is. In fact, the two main opposition candidates are still in court till now. So there's definitely some Tinubu, has some winning over to do. His administration has some winning over to do. We know that his winning margin, 38%, was the lowest in Nigeria's democratic era. So what I would say is he definitely has to get Nigerians on board. And personally, I think he actually, aside this situation, he has started well. He's seemed energetic, right? Meeting with different stakeholders. In just the 10 days he's been on board.
Right.
And I think that whilst people can acknowledge that, as I said, the sense in the removal of fuel subsidy, it doesn't remove from the reality on the ground that, there's transportation costs has gone overnight up by a factor of 200%. So what I would say is, even if it's for political reasons, even if a lot of it might be cosmetic, he definitely has to do something. Definitely.
All right. Well, quite a lot really to chew on this subject. And we have been talking about the Dangote refinery. We've been talking about our own local refineries. Do you see a likely change in the current situation when the Dangote refinery eventually comes on stream? Comrade.
Well, I believe, yes, there will be a change because the prices for refining will definitely be lower than importing it.
So,
But what?
So respectfully, what's the rationale behind that?
Well, because I believe going abroad to refine will cost more than bringing the products and doing it and refining it within Nigeria.
Plus, they also did cancel the
Comrade, part of the argument
the crude
is
oil
that
swap deals.
Oil prices are determined internationally.
Globally,
That's part of the arguments that have been made. And people have said, well, Dangote is basically into business.
He's a businessman.
He has to
doing
make
business.
profit,
So
right.
he's not, just going to bring down the price merely because he's producing in Nigeria
Exactly.
and the rest of them. So when you hear such arguments, really, it doesn't look like there's much hope when it comes to bringing down the price of the product.
And that's why we keep on insisting on government fixing our 3 major refineries in the country. And also giving license. This modular refinery it can be of help.
Right.
Because even if they are still doing it, but if you give them license, they will now they will produce more instead of doing it in hiding.
Right.
You understand? So that is my thinking, and it will not take much time to fix our own refineries.
All right. Well, so far it has taken ages really to make it happen.
Because they don't want
Nigerians actually wonder
it.
whether there's ever going to be a time when these refineries will work, because for decades we've been singing the same song. But let's just leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us, Comrade Anthony Asogwa, who is also the Acting General Secretary of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, and also Chukwuma Chinye Jr., a researcher at the Center for Democracy and Development. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you very much.